Members' motion to take note of a report of the House Committee on Consideration of Subsidiary Legislation. Members who wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. Mr. Chun-ying will move a motion under Rule 49E(2) of the Rules of Procedure to take note of the Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026, which is included in Report number 9 of 2026 of the House Committee laid on the table of the Council. I will first call upon Mr. Chun-ying to speak and move the motion. Then I will call upon Ms. Chen Hao-yin, Chair of the Subcommittee formed to scrutinize relevant subsidiary legislation to speak, to be followed by other members. Finally, I will call upon the public officers to speak. Then the debate will come to a close. The motion will not be put to vote. I remind members that this piece of subsidiary legislation aims to introduce a licensing arrangement that allows operators to apply for permission to let dogs enter the food premises. Members must focus on the content of subsidiary legislation, avoid any irrelevant matters. I now call upon Mr. Chun-ying to speak and move the motion. President, in my capacity as chairman of the House Committee, I move the motion as printed on the agenda as in accordance with Rule 49E(2) of the Rules of Procedure be passed so that members can have a debate on Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026 in Report number 9/2026 of the House Committee on Consideration of Subsidiary Legislation and Other Instruments. Here are my personal views. President, allowing dogs in restaurants will boost F&B facilities in Hong Kong that needs revitalization after 30-odd years. It can also provide more diversified dining options for the 240,000 households that are keeping pets. I support the government in being innovative in this regard. We need to allow some room for exploration for the industry, but the government should also have a comprehensive consideration of different scenarios that may take place after implementation. I was not a member of the subcommittee, but I am a member of the panel on food safety and environmental hygiene. Under this piece of subsidiary legislation, we will have a new Section 31B that will empower the director to grant permission in writing to a person for the presence of any dog. But the provision does not specify restaurants in operation need to affix relevant signage. We have some citizens that may have allergies or they may be sensitive to animals. In fact, in my office, there are 2 such individuals, which is why I said at a panel meeting that there should be clear signage affixed at conspicuous locations for citizens and visitors to identify the restaurants that allow entry of dogs. And the Bureau is ready to disperse unified signage to restaurants, and the Bureau's representatives displayed such signage at the panel meeting. I think it's quite clear. I agree with what other members said. We need to have clear information on mobile apps and online platforms so that citizens can find out more about which restaurants allow entry of dogs to enhance transparency. With unified signage, it protects citizens' right to know and their right to choose the different restaurants. We need to look at the actual circumstances after implementation to see if the design and specifications as well as the affixation locations are enough for citizens to identify restaurants that allow entry of dogs. We would often see disputes between people, and we expect disputes alike for dogs. We need to mitigate relevant risks. Last August, we have for the tetanus relevant legislation as requiring dogs to be planted with chips, and those who have applied for relevant licenses need to continue to provide to their dogs vaccinations and renewal of licenses. But these only apply to certain dogs. So there will be some dogs in the city that do not meet the relevant requirements for registration and diseases. I note in previous discussions we focus on the control of certain dog breeds instead of whether dogs are licensed. If we can check the registration of dogs before allowing entry of dogs into restaurants, I think it will encourage pet owners to provide vaccination for their dogs and renew relevant registration to truly safeguard safety of relevant stakeholders. President, I submit. I now propose a question to you that the motion moved by Mr. Chun-ying be passed. Ms. Chen Ho-yan. Thank you, President. The main purpose of the Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026 is to introduce licensing arrangements allowing restaurant operators to apply to permit the presence of dogs in licensed restaurants. The administration will also, by imposing additional licensing conditions and providing guidelines on best practices, ensure that environmental, hygiene, and food safety are not compromised. During the subcommittee's deliberations, members of the subcommittee put forward a number of suggestions to the administration regarding the regulatory framework for allowing dogs in restaurants and discussed specific arrangements in detail. It included prohibiting fighting dogs and non-dangerous dogs from entering restaurants, practical operational arrangements, handling of non-compliance, staff training at restaurants, the impact on the industry and other stakeholders, etc. The subcommittee also invited the public to make written submissions. The submissions received came from different sectors, including the catering and hotel industries, animal welfare organizations, venue management bodies, pet owners, and other members of the public. They generally agreed that provided environmental hygiene and food safety are safeguarded, it is a prudent approach for the administration to allow dogs in restaurants under specified conditions, adopting a selective and gradual approach. The subcommittee has no objections to the amendment regulation. Neither the subcommittee nor the administration intends to propose any amendments to the amendment regulation. The following are my personal views. Let me declare that my family has adopted 9 dogs. I understand the relevant piece of regulation has not been updated in 30 years. With the amendment, it will really benefit pet owners, but then I also understand there are different opinions in society raising concerns about allowing dogs in restaurants. We need to respect them, and I think the amendments have struck a balance. After implementation of the amendment proposals, not all restaurants can allow dogs into restaurants right away, and in the first batch, only 500 to 1,000 quotas will be granted. It's just 3 to 5% of the total number of restaurants in Hong Kong. Also, some requirements would have to be complied with by restaurants. There will be penalties for non-compliance. I'm sure restaurants and pet dog owners are more than willing to comply with such requirements, but I think in actual operation, it would take some time for people to adjust. For example, there is a requirement for the dog to be either leashed to an owner or an adult or to a fixture. Now, we have discussed the definition of fixture. If the dog is just leashed to a pet bag, that would not be in compliance with the relevant requirement. Even if the leash is affixed to a table or a chair, if it is movable, it does not comply with the requirements either. We need to make sure people won't inadvertently breach the law because they don't understand the details of the provisions. I want to say the amendments are just a starting point. We need to be prudent after the relevant provisions come into effect. We need to pay attention to the society's views after implementation. We also have some requirements for restaurants to affix signage and to disseminate such information about restaurants that allow entry of dogs online. We need to make it easy for people to see which restaurants allow entry of dogs so that those who are afraid of dogs or are allergic to dogs can make their choices. The government should also promulgate the timeline for the next batch of applications to be received so that we can move on to an inclusive society. I so submit. Thank you, President. Mr. Stephen Ho, I speak in support of the amendments. I would like to thank the government for making these amendments happen. I heard what Mr. Chun-ying and Ms. Chen Hao-yan said, but let me say something here. We did not allow dogs to enter restaurants because there was tetanus in Hong Kong. So to protect citizens' safety, we did not allow entry of dogs. But with our efforts in the past years, we no longer is a zone for tetanus. So we heard Mr. Chun-ying said, for example, whether frontline officers have to check the dogs are planted with chips. And we have a very low risk of rabies being contracted by citizens. We have a very low risk, but we still have many smuggled dogs in Hong Kong. So in order to ensure safety, the government should do more to combat smuggling of dogs. We would also want to allow dogs in outside seating accommodation, which we already allowed before, and people can just purchase delivery or take away food with things being moved inside. Before, we had not have any incidents, so operators may underestimate the relevant risks of accidents happening. I hope the government will specifically consider the issue of leashes being affixed to fixtures and make sure people understand well what the requirements entail. We visited Sai Kung and Stanley before, and we could see there are some unintended consequences. For example, dogs barking, causing a nuisance, and staff members did not have experience serving pets. With the owner, they may be scared of dogs, but they are owners, so they may not be affected. But staff members who are scared of dogs can't really do anything. So this becomes sort of an employment hazard. We will have some guidelines and best practices promulgated in future, but it would be up to the owners to allow, say, how many dogs into the restaurant and how the dogs should be leashed. But like I said earlier, owners without relevant experience may underestimate relevant risks causing accidents. Perhaps we should make sure, for example, the passageways should not have dogs there. Before, when waiters serve food, they don't have to be afraid of bumping into humans because they will be able to see them, but dogs will be much smaller. They may not see the dogs and they may step on the dogs. In actual operation, it may cause risk both for the dogs and staff members. We may have more disputes. The government, in the initial implementation of relevant laws, need to provide legal support and delineate responsibilities. I would also like to express my dissatisfaction. The government has not considered designating a minimum or maximum number of dogs for the specific area of restaurant that allows entry of dogs. If they have a really small area that have 100 dogs there, how can you ensure that the dogs won't fight even if you can ensure food safety? We should have some standards that should be included in the next batch of legislative amendments.
Mr. Perry, you. Thank you, President. As a member of this subcommittee, I speak in support of the Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026. Through the amendments, I hope that the catering industry will receive more businesses and then we can promote a pet-friendly environment. The government has adopted the approach of taking small and prudent steps in allowing dogs in food premises. In the first phase, 500 to 100 quotas will be set aside. That's about 3 to 5% of all restaurants in Hong Kong. It's not a high percentage. The government will review the effectiveness in 6 months, and I appreciate the government's prudent attitude. After all, there are members of the public who are afraid of small animals or dogs. We received 160 foreign submissions, the majority of which are in support of this legislative amendment. This legislative amendment will make it convenient for dog owners to bring their dogs to restaurants to have a meal together. And some even ask for the policy to be implemented as quickly as possible. Now, the government should closely monitor the situation and, when need be, expedite the progress so as to further expand the scheme and promote a pet-inclusive environment. There is also a need to provide flexibility. Now, restaurants will have the autonomy to decide on a number of things. There are 3 tiers when it comes to this regulatory framework. First, amendments to the food business regulation. Second, additional licensing requirements. And third, practical guides. And in fact, this legislative amendment is relatively simple. It covers the types of dogs that should be banned from food premises and the requirement for dog owners to either hold the dog on leash or tied it to the fixture, and relevant penalties. As for additional licensing requirements, these include, for example, putting up notices at the entrance of restaurants at a conspicuous place to ensure that the utensils for use by humans and by dogs will not be shared, as well as thoroughly disinfecting and cleansing the soiled areas and other hygiene measures. As for the best practice guides, they provide details on the implementation requirements. Now, during the deliberations, members discussed the number of dogs that should be allowed in the food premises, the handling of emergencies, and also whether fees should be charged for cleaning the dog excrement. I want to emphasize that there are different restaurants with different layouts and target customers, and that is why we must not put in place a too rigid a guideline. We must preserve flexibility. The FEHD should work closely with the sector and understand the needs of the sector so as to draw a set of proper and useful practical guide for the implementation of this initiative so that we allow flexibility. I so submit Mr. Hong Kim in. President, without compromising food safety and environmental hygiene, the Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026 will allow dog owners to take dogs into food premises this is a practical step towards achieving pet-inclusive environment. We have over 300,000 pet dogs in Hong Kong, and we have a large group of dog owners, and there are 1.8 million licensed restaurants in Hong Kong. In the first phase, only 500 to 1,000 restaurants will be allowed to apply for a license, and that's 3 to 5%. And for the restaurants, they pay a fee of $140 for endorsements in their existing licenses. This can help them tap new market and bring business opportunities. From the community's point of view, we can create a pet-friendly environment. Many families already have pets And there is a need for the pet owners to bring their dogs to restaurants as well. We want to put people first and be a caring society, so I support that on 4 principles. First, we should allow customers to make choices. We need to ensure safety and hygiene. There should be regulation and also management of risks to lower the risks and address concerns of nuisance. In the first phase, only restaurants with a size bigger than 20 square meters will be eligible to apply. Now, if the quota is reached, lots will be drawn. And then I hope that these restaurants with the dog emission permission will come from all 18 districts. There should be even distribution to facilitate dog owners. The government should also gauge the market changes, and in light of complaints, the government should conduct inspection proactively. Now, there is a general support from community on the amendment. However, I have the following concerns. There should be a clear delineation of responsibility in the event of a dog causing harm. The government should not pass the buck to the industry. The public liability insurance should also adopt a lower premium to allay the concerns of operators. Now, in terms of identifying dangerous dogs, there is a lack of training and a lack of information. We should set up an inquiry system for restaurants to check the types of dogs so as to enhance safety management. The third point is about environmental hygiene and civic mindedness. Dog hair may cause allergy. Dogs may soil the place. We need to manage their behavior properly. Although, according to this regulation, utensils for human and dogs will be separated, and the area must be disinfected. We still rely on the dog owners to exercise self-restraints. So the government should step up publicity and education. There should be proper law enforcement action to ensure that the environmental hygiene is up to standard. Well, we need to have regard to the interests of not only dog owners but non-dog owners as well. We should keep things flexible. Now, after receiving applications in the first phase, the government should gauge the situation, collect feedback from the public, and optimize the implementation details in a timely manner so as to draw up a framework with standards for better implementation. Now, this amendment is visionary. We need to continue to enhance safety and environmental hygiene and delineate responsibilities very clearly to ensure smooth implementation. I so submit. Mr. Gary Chan. Thank you, President. In this council, I am one of the members who have always been animal friendly. I always ask for more animal friendly policies to be introduced, so I support the government's initiative to allow dogs into food premises. Now, we always receive polarized views when it comes to pets. Some people are in strong support of pet-friendly policies, and some are quite concerned. So the government has adopted the approach of taking small and prudent steps. This round, I think this is appropriate. After all, there are people in the community who are concerned about food safety. If we allow dogs to enter food premises, they may be scared of animals. So what's important in this piece of legislation is that people who are fond of dogs or people who hate dogs will be able to choose the restaurants they prefer. Now, in the past, dog owners may only buy takeaway food and sit outside the restaurant with their dogs. Now, as long as you put up a sign at the entrance of the restaurant in a conspicuous place, customers will be able to know whether it's a dog emission permitted restaurant, and they can decide whether to go in or not. I think we are Finally, taking this step, this will bring us on a par with other major cities in Europe or in the mainland. This will enhance our profile as a pet-friendly city. However, the devil is in the details. As mentioned by a lot of members, when this initiative is implemented, the government should have regard to the different needs of stakeholders, especially since Hong Kong restaurants are usually quite crowded. How do we make sure, for example, that food hygiene will not be compromised? Now, some patrons may not be afraid of dogs, but they may be concerned about food hygiene. So other members mentioned, for example, how do we make sure that the dog will be held on a leash or tied securely to a fixture, and the definition of fixture. And at the two meetings of the subcommittee, these were matters discussed. I think that the government should carefully consider members' suggestions. The government will conduct a review in 6 months. I hope that in the coming months, the restaurants will follow strictly the government's guidelines. At the same time, pet owners should make sure that their pets are under proper control. Otherwise, despite this being a very good policy, we may not succeed in implementing it, and this would be a great pity. From the economic point of view, it is said that this new arrangement will help the catering industry tap new business opportunities. Now, this is just the start. I think there is a lot to be desired. For example, when it comes to safety of pet food, the labeling system for pet food should be put in place as labeling requirement for suppliers, importers of pet food. Now, we need to do things step by step because, after all, there are 240,000 households with pets. We're talking about a lot of potential for this economy. It will be a very significant market, but this market should be regulated to make sure that the interests of the public will not be compromised. So this amendment marks a new beginning. This will help us take forward pet-friendly policies.
Ms. Michelle Tang. Thank you, President. We have, under this item, introduction of licensing arrangements to allow restaurant operators to allow entry of dogs. As a member of the subcommittee, I would like to first express my full support for the amendment proposals. I love dogs. Since I was a child, I have been accompanied by dogs. I am also an experienced dog volunteer. I was in touch with many different pets and pet owners. I can say for many pet owners, pets are not just animals. They are their family members. We have had in recent years greater calls for dogs being allowed in restaurants in society, and with the amendment proposals, we are moving forward. It is an important step that we're taking in society. The amendments are about empowering the director to grant permission for the presence of dogs in food premises. The subcommittee looked at the regulatory framework and how it is complemented by best practices and guidelines. I think with the three-tier framework, we will be able to safeguard food safety and environmental hygiene. There are some specific requirements. For example, when dogs are present on the premises, they must be securely held on a leash or securely tied to a fixture on a leash. I believe that will assure other patrons of restaurants. On licensing requirements, there are additional operational requirements set by the FEHD. Dogs can can't be seated at tables. They can't eat the cooked or reheated food on the table. I believe this will be an additional safeguard. The FEHD will have guidelines and best practices for operators and patrons reference. For example, what to do when the dogs foul themselves and ventilation requirements. During the subcommittee meetings, I actually raised concerns about air quality issues. We have very small spaces in Hong Kong. When we have hair coming off of dogs, other patrons in restaurants may be affected, especially those who are allergic. I suggested that the government require restaurants to put in place air purifiers. The administration said they will not make this a mandatory requirement, but they will consider including this in the guidelines. I think this is a good balance between offering flexibility and providing a good experience for all. I believe for those who want to operate pet-friendly restaurants, they would want to do more for the sake of customers. The key to successfully implement the amendment proposals is about execution. I'm glad to hear that we will have more officers deployed to communicate and conduct inspections on the approved restaurants. I hope the inspections will be specific and there should be regular and random inspections to ensure compliance. Publicity and education as well as staff training are also important. I suggest that the government disseminate online relevant information on which restaurants allow the entry of dogs so that people can have a choice. We should also provide training to practitioners so that they know more about how pets or how animals behave and what they should do when there is something wrong. We also need to make sure dog owners know to be responsible what practices they should have, for example, to keep control of their pets. Thank you. Mr. Yang Wing-kit. Thank you, President. I am scared of dogs, so I used to be against pet inclusiveness, but I have been in touch with different groups of people. I do understand there is a trend of pet inclusiveness. I therefore support the amendment proposals. The amendments are mainly about when requirements complied with, dogs will be allowed in restaurants. I believe the amendments keep abreast of the times and respond to the calls in society for pet inclusive environments. We have many locals going to the north for consumption. It has really caused great pressure on the local eateries. We also have some different consumption pressure. There is much need to have new opportunities for restaurants. We have pet owners not as likely to go to the north. They're not as likely to travel because they are attached to their pets. So with dining options available for dogs, it will directly affect their consumption habits. We need to tap into this opportunity with great potential. The amendments are an important step for us to promote pet economy in Hong Kong. The amendment regulation also specifies requirements for allowing dogs in restaurants. We have seen this striking a balance between pet friendliness and public safety and hygiene. For example, dogs have to be on leashes not more than 1.5 meters in length. Known dangerous dogs and fighting dogs are not allowed in restaurants. I believe that is a good safeguard to protect other patrons' safety and minimize the chance of disputes happening. On this basis, we should enhance publicity and public education. While we would have the specific information uploaded onto FEHC website, but I think relying on this is not enough. We need to make sure we have APIs to tell citizens clearly the differences between general dogs or known dangerous dogs. We need to also provide training to practitioners so that they can make a quick judgment on whether the dogs are known dangerous dogs or fighting dogs before they allow dogs to enter the restaurants. The government should hold online and offline seminars and perhaps provide some FAQs for practitioners to know about the penalties and the procedures so as to ensure successful implementation of the amendment proposals so that we can strike a balance between promoting pet economy and not compromising public safety and hygiene. I support the amendments. I hope the government will step up relevant publicity and provide ancillary support so that Hong Kong will become a pet-friendly and more competitive city. Thank you. I so submit.
文化政府提出2026年
Mr. Jonathan Leung, to respond to calls in society for pet friendliness, the government proposed amendments to the food business regulation for restaurants to develop new customer sources and promote pet economy. The Liberal Party supports the initiative. Section 10B of Chapter 132X did not allow dogs to enter restaurants to respond to concerns in society back then of rabies, as we see less of such concerns in recent years and greater demand for pet-friendly premises. We have now pet-friendly premises in shopping malls, parks, as well as modes of transportation. But due to restrictions in law, dogs are not allowed in restaurants. So citizens still face difficulties in bringing dogs to eat. In this year's policy address, the chief executive proposed relaxing relevant restrictions. Except for restaurants that are less than 20 square meters in areas, other restaurants can choose whether to apply for permission to allow dogs in restaurants based on their circumstances. Different restaurants, based on their different circumstances, for example, the staff members, the patrons, and the environment, may treat dogs differently. We have some specific requirements, for example, to have restaurants affix signage if they are granted permission. Known dangerous dogs and fighting dogs are not allowed to enter restaurants. Dogs have to be leashed. Dogs can't enter food rooms, etc. The other factors, such as the number of dogs that can enter restaurants, whether smaller dogs can be seated, whether we will have specific time slots for entry of dogs, these will be included in best practices and guidelines for the reference of the industry. We believe it will offer flexibility, but we need to make sure there is awareness of citizens to understand there may be different arrangements in different restaurants. We can also provide a channel for restaurants to upload their own arrangements, information on their own arrangements, so that citizens can plan in advance. We also have some compliance costs that are associated with the amendment proposals. Restaurants are worried perhaps some patrons who don't like dogs will not come to the restaurants. So some restaurants have reservations. if we have in the first phase of the 500, 1,000 quotas quickly filled, the government should quickly increase the number of quotas and have the quotas available for those who have applied but were not selected. This should lower the administrative costs for restaurants. Apart from the basic provisions that would mandate hygiene and safety, it is also important to enhance awareness of dog owners to make sure they keep their dogs under control so that other patrons won't be disturbed. About the arrangements to allow dogs to enter restaurants, we should practice flexible management. We need to strike a balance between the needs of dog owners as well as the restaurant operators and other patrons' needs to slowly foster a pet inclusive culture and move towards a new era for the catering industry. I speak in support of the amendment regulation.
Professor Priscilla Lang. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026. The amendment is about allowing dogs to enter food premises. Previously, no person engaged in the food business should knowingly suffer or permit the presence of any dog on their food premises except for guide dogs or dogs in connection with the exercise of a lawful power, unless consent have been obtained from the director. And it is specified that the adult need to keep the dog on a leash of no more than 1.5 meters in length. I'm a owner of a pet dog. I have kept it for 10 years. I very much welcome the amendment. I was one of the parties promoting the MTRC allowing pets to board the last carriage of a train because many people need to be accompanied by their pets when they go out. So last year in May, I went to a MTR station and I boarded a train while having my pet kept in my pet carriers. I think that the most important thing about the amendment is about safety and the cleanliness. And we also need to educate the staff of a restaurant. I used to be a district councillor. I'm a LegCo member. I used to serve Whampoa and Kowloon district. Many people are against pets and animals. Most people who like to keep pets are in Sai Kung, in Tin Khao, in Chun Wan. I'm one of those who live in Tin Khao. Many people, they have different views regarding pet keeping, not to mention restaurants. So I'd like to stress this. How can we promote pet inclusiveness properly? We need to make it clear to the pet owners that they need to be wary of others' opinions. We need to minimize disputes. When I bring my dog out, I will keep it in the carrier. I brought it to Chinese restaurants in Sai Kung, and I often keep it in the carrier as I dine as well. Now, dogs no longer need to be kept inside the carrier when they're in a restaurant, so we need to change our habit. Now we can keep it on a leash and fix the leash to the fixture. I may not change this habit because my dog is used to jumping into the carrier when they go out. So the pet owner need to understand more clearly about the content of the regulations. If they find it inconvenient to dine with their pets inside the restaurants, maybe they can opt for outdoor seating. Regardless of whether someone likes dog or not, whether they want to bring their dogs inside the restaurants or not, they need to understand in detail about the regulations. I hope that the Secretary will explain clearly about the regulations. We want this new measure to be successful. I think that people need to be self-disciplined. A smaller dog of mine used to be bitten by a larger dog, and my dog was sent to an animal hospital. Despite that, my dog's character has not changed, but for other dogs that have been bitten by other animals, they may have a strong reaction when they see larger dogs or larger animals. We also have to be mindful of this. When there are restaurants with many animals, neighbors may have negative feelings against that. So I need to make sure that the residents or neighbors are prepared. Thank you. Mr. Shiu Ka-fai. Thank you, President. Secretary Che. This piece of regulation is crucial to our city. I represent the wholesale and retail industry. I went to many exhibitions on pet, and I see that there are more and more stakeholders and users in the industry. So there is greater demand for allowing pets inside restaurants. The discussion stayed stagnant. This term of the government is capable. They are rolling out this piece of regulation despite the controversy. Some people are scared of dogs. Some people are concerned about the hygiene problems when we allow dogs inside restaurants. This amendment is controversial, but after all, we need to before looking, we amend the regulation to tell people that they have a choice. People in the catering industries, restaurant owners used to be worried about affecting other customers when they allow dogs inside. But here in the regulation, we tell the restaurants operators that they have a choice. They can choose to allow dogs inside the restaurants or not, depending on their target audience. If they allow dogs inside, then the restaurants may not be as clean. They have to strike a balance. They may need to make sacrifices. Some customers who don't like dogs would opt for restaurants that don't allow dogs inside. Those that like dogs may choose to go to restaurants with a permit. I think that we need to allow people to have choices. Given our low fertility rate, many people treat their dogs and cats as their children. That's a fact. They invest much time and resources into their pets. If we allow these pets inside the restaurants, pets will not only have to stay home, they can go outside, and that's beneficial to the mental health and well-being of the owners and the pet. This is also an industry. And by amending the regulation, we bring new opportunities to the catering industry. We have been promoting opening up open space for catering, and I think that this is in line with the relevant goal that we have. But there are things that we have to be careful of. Now, there is no separation between larger and smaller dogs. And I think that that's up to the restaurant owners to work on it. Second, we don't want to see accidents, but accidents are bound to happen. We need to be clear about the liability issue. The Secretary explained about that in the meeting, but I hope that in the future, the restaurants will put up signage very clearly in the premises that the pet keeper will need to be liable when their dogs cause any accidents. We need to make sure that restaurant owners will be cleared of responsibilities if the dogs inside the restaurants bite someone else. And also think that we need to work on encouraging restaurants to take out insurance. And the administration need to send their staff to conduct inspection and patrols on the hygienes of the food premises. If there's anything that needs improvement, we should work on it. Thank you. If there's no other member wish to speak, I will call upon the public officer to speak, then the debate will come to a close. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, I thank Mr. Chun-ying for moving today's motion under Rule 49E(2) of the Rules of Procedure in relation to the Food Business Amendment Regulation 2026. I'm grateful for the views expressed by the members just now. The government will definitely seriously consider them. I'd also like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to Ms. Chen Huaiyan, Chairman of the Subcommittee on the Subsidiary Legislation, Mr. Stephen Ho, Deputy Chairman, and other members for their hard work, which has enabled the scrutiny to be completed smoothly. I'm pleased to note that more than 160 submissions were received by the subcommittee from the public and the trade, with nearly 100% of them expressing support for the amendments. The amendment regulations responds to the aspirations of many people. Most importantly, it provides a choice for everyone. Restaurants can choose whether or not to apply for permission to allow dogs onto the premises. People may likewise choose whether to patronize such establishments. This amendment not only helps promote mutual respect and harmony between humans and pets, but also open up new business opportunities for the catering industry, a development which many operators are eagerly anticipating. The amendment regulation will come into operation this Friday, 8th of May, but dogs are not yet permitted to enter restaurants at this stage. Restaurants must first submit an application and obtain approval. As many members said, we need to make sure that the trade clearly understands the regulatory requirements and they need to have sufficient time for preparation. As a result, the FEHD has written to all restaurant licensees inviting interested parties to attend briefing sessions over the next 2 to 3 weeks. The FEHD will also arrange for the Institute of Shopping Center Management, the Hong Kong Federation of Insurers, and the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals to be present to share their experience and relevant information with the trade, so that they are aware of the regulatory requirements and any other information that they need to know. The FEHD will start accepting applications on the 18th of May. Should the number of applications exceed 1,000, quotas will be allocated by ballot. Successful applicants are required to pay a fee of $140 within a specified period to amend their licenses to include the permission. Following this, we will reserve time for the trade to make operational arrangements. A specific day in the first half of July will be designated from which onwards dog will be allowed into approved restaurants. This date will be announced in due course. I'd like to remind everyone that until formal approval is granted, restaurants must not display signs permitting the entry of dogs on their own accord, and no persons may bring dogs onto the premises. In response to the views and concerns expressed by members, I'd like to provide a consolidated response covering 3 main areas. First, regulatory framework. Some members are concerned that while the government maintains its role as a gatekeeper, it must also retain flexibility and avoid overregulation. To achieve an optimal balance, the regulatory framework is composed of legislation, licensing conditions, and the guidelines on good practices and behavior. The guidelines, in short, these are prescribed or illustrated in different ways depending on the nature of the matter. At the legislative level, requirements will be established for key matters involving the protection of public and food safety, clearly defining the legal liabilities of restaurant operators and customers with dogs. At the licensing level, the FHD will impose additional licensing conditions on the operational arrangements of approved restaurants, such as the requirement to display designated signage at a conspicuous place at the entrance. FHD will compile guidelines to provide advice on matters at the discretion of restaurant operators and factors that they may wish to take into account in exercising such discretion, so as to assist restaurant operators in devising their own operational arrangements and house rules having regard to actual circumstances. The guideline will set out the responsibilities of customers bringing dogs so as to facilitate the smooth operation of restaurants. Second, on dog control. Members have also raised views regarding the control of dogs within restaurants, such as the number of dogs allowed to be brought in, as well as arrangements for the use of pet strollers, bags, and pee pads. As I mentioned just now, we will adopt a tiered approach by utilizing a combination of legislation, licensing conditions, and the guidelines. Restaurant environments are generally more confined and crowded, and staff are constantly serving hot foods and drinks. Should a dog lose control, the safety risk involved will be higher than those in general public places. Therefore, the legislation prescribes that when a dog is within food premises, it must be securely held on a leash or securely tied to a fixture in a specified manner. The FHD will also regulate restaurant licensees through licensing conditions, such as prohibiting the use of open flames or heating food on dining tables. As for other matters, the FHD will provide references for operators in the guidelines, such as suggesting a maximum of 2 dogs per adult customer, thereby allowing restaurant operators to formulate their own operational arrangements with regard to actual circumstances. Third, information dissemination and publicity. Some members suggested that the government should step up publicity. This is precisely the focus of our work. We will launch television announcement in the public interest and radio APIs and utilize various channels such as the social media platforms of the departmental mascot Keep Clean Ambassador Tech, newspapers, and other media to extensively publicize the new measures. Regarding the trade, the FHD will hold briefing sessions over the next 2 to 3 weeks and will deploy staff to the premises of successful applicants to explain the regulatory requirements once more before granting permission. The FHD has established a dedicated webpage to continuously consolidate relevant information, including a list of permitted restaurants, website links provided by the restaurants, license conditions, FAQs, the guidelines, recordings of the briefing sessions for easy access by the public and the trade at any time. President, the amendment regulation cautiously relaxes a ban that has been in place for over 30 years, allowing restaurant operators to apply for permission to allow dogs onto the premises. By adopting a taking small steps for prudent implementation approach, we're progressing step by step under the prerequisite of ensuring food safety and environmental hygiene. I look forward to everyone showing mutual support and enjoying their meals in an atmosphere of harmony between people and pets when dogs are permitted to enter approved restaurants in July. If operations run smoothly, we will enhance the arrangements as necessary and expect to accept the next phase of applications as early as next 6 months after the launch of the first stage. Thank you, President. In accordance with Rule 49E(9) of the Rules of Procedure, I will not put any question on the motion. I now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. on Wednesday, 13th of May 2026.